This is the culture.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Cinema Wave podcast. I'm one of your hosts today, Mark Jacobino, dressed up as Gojo Satoru today. I'm joined by another one of my animation crew members, Vinny Albano.
Yep, pleasure to be here.
And we're really excited to talk about this today. We are talking about Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, specifically the first arc of Season 2, Hidden Inventory and Premature Death. We both dressed up as JJK characters for Halloween. We both dressed up as Nanami before we even knew each other. So I am very excited to have the chemistry in the studio today. I want to just jump right into it. What did you think of this arc overall? Because for me, this was the arc that made me fall in love with the show. I loved season 1, but this was like, okay, I'm really invested in JJK. What did you think of this arc overall?
I 100% agree. I think that the first season of JJK, I enjoyed. I really liked it. It was a fun, like, action shonen, but it felt like there was more there. It felt like there was more to be, tapped into. And this arc is what really set it for me. I honestly believe that this arc, I know it's a big statement, but I think this is a masterpiece of an arc.
Wow.
I think I genuinely love it. It's a short arc. It's tight. It's consistent. It feels like a movie. And like you mentioned, it made us fall in love with just JJK because it explores these characters to a deeper level. And it explores like what JJK really is, that darker, and I mentioned we'll go into it later in the episode, but I love how this arc really dives into its philosophies as a series. I did actually read this arc in manga form.
Okay, I was going to ask you if you had seen it, if you had read it already.
But I think the anime does such a good job. I enjoyed it so much more in anime form than I did reading it.
Yeah, for me, this arc was extremely character-centric. Obviously, Geto and Gojo taking center stage. I'd even argue, Geto is the main character of this arc. We start the arc with him, swallowing the curse and telling us what a cursed spirit tastes like, and then it ends kind of with the same dialogue with him inside himself. So he is actually the protagonist, which is very interesting because this is the second time that JJK has done that. With the movie, they focus on a new protagonist, and then in this flashback, they focus on another new protagonist. But I think it works out. I think why I love it is a character-centric arc. I think the first season has a lot of great introductions to characters, but I don't think we go as deep maybe with most of them. I think with maybe like Maki and Megami, we get some deeper storytelling, but I think here we get all three. Even Toji, I think, has a really good arc here in his introduction. So I think because of the character focus, that's what got me excited about it. I think the new art direction for this season, especially here, has like blown season 1 out of the water from a directorial standpoint. And then just stylistically, I think the brighter colors and the way they're animating fights and scenes is just so much more impactful for you as the audience to be kind of sucked into it. But yeah, I think the only criticism I have for this arc is that I think with JJK sometimes it can be very convoluted in the way it explains things. I think it could simplify some of the explanations because the first time I watched this, the whole like star plasma, Q, everything around that, and like Toji kind of in there, I was like, I don't really understand what's going on, but I was like, it gets a pass because it's very character focused. So at least that's what it looked like for me. What did you think about the new art direction, where they took this season?
So I absolutely love it. I know there's a lot of hate online, which I think is 100% undeserved because I love it. I really prefer the more fluidity of the animation. I liked how you mentioned the colors as well. I feel like this arc has a very unique color palette compared to any of the other arcs. And obviously we're on Shibuya now, which is a lot more darker and desaturated. But I love like the really bright blues, and it feels like summertime, which it is. In this arc, it does take place in the summer, and it feels like that. And I love that. And I even love, which we can also get into the symbolism of the colors used here.
Yes.
Because the use of red and blue is very significant. And we see it pop up in Shibuya as well with the Choso and Itadori fight, which we'll save for the Shibuya review. But yeah, no, I loved the art direction in this. I think later on when we just more dive into individual episodes, I have so many scenes and just key animators that I want to thank.
Sure,
because they did such an incredible job. I think it adds so much more life compared to the first season.
Definitely. I think I want to dive right in with Geto and Gojo and their kind of arcs through this particular little piece of season 2 that we have, and how both of their worldviews completely flip. Gojo has always been arrogant. He's always been, the strongest, so he's always been arrogant in that way. But here we see he has malice. He almost has like a much worse arrogance to him, because he looks at people as lower than him. He's like, we don't need to protect the weak. And Geto's philosophy is it's survival of the weakest. We need to protect the weakest. And both of their worldviews flip by the end because of this journey they both go on. What did you think of their arcs here and how they flip, characters that we knew from season 1? I think it would have been interesting to watch this before season 1, because we already had an idea of who Gojo was going into this. But I think if he was introduced in this arc, we would have been like, wow, I don't really like this guy as much if we didn't have season 1 to go off. So what did you think of both of their arcs here?
I loved it. I actually really adored it, because seeing that different perspective on the characters, and I will say JJK is told in a weird way, especially with the release order of things, because we have season 1, which is the future or present day, I guess, and then JJK is a prequel. JJK 0 is a prequel, and then this is a prequel to the prequel. But seeing the different perspective and kind of seeing where they end up first, and then going all the way back and seeing how they were, it adds like a level of doom kind of over your head, like this impending doom of like Geto's gonna turn out at some point. And I love that. And I love the little details and the overall journey to Geto's transformation. I think that this is honestly one of my favorite examples of like a hero becoming a villain in anime, which is it's really difficult to say, because there's a lot of great examples of that in anime.
It's almost a trope at this point. Yeah,
exactly. But I just love how in only 5 episodes, and these are like short episodes too, they're not like long, they're 22 minutes long, so in only 5 22-minute episodes, they're able to really flesh out Geto, and you fully understand and you see like the switch in him, which I adore. Same with Gojo too. And seeing Gojo's transformation in this is insane. I think we got one of the most memorable moments in all of JJK with the whole Gojo awakening and him obviously quoting Buddha, which is insane. But I adored it.
Yeah, it was crazy, obviously, to see Gojo fully transform, and going back to Geto, I just feel like he was the protagonist here, and that's what makes it so much sadder, because it's really told from his perspective most of the time. He's the one that reaches out to Riko, I forget her name. Riko, yeah. He reaches out to her, and his philosophy doesn't technically change. He still wants to protect the weak, but by the end, to protect the weak, you have to kill the weak, which is very interesting dynamic. Let's jump into some of the, I guess, world building of JJK here with the Star Religious Group with Q. You were a little bit more connected to that than me.
Yeah.
What did you feel about that whole story arc, and then obviously the tie-in to Tengen, who is this person that puts up barriers around Japan, and that really protects the people from seeing what Jujutsu sorcerers do, like protecting them. They almost do it in the shadow. So what did you think of that part of the world building?
I think the Q organization was a little forced in there, but I mean, for storytelling means, okay. However, the Time Vessel Association, I actually really like what they're setting up there. And I don't know if they're ever going to explore them again. I hope they're exploring them again, because I really love with that and setting up Master Tengen, but we never actually see him.
Right.
he's kind of being set up in the shadows as like this force.
Yeah.
And I really like that because eventually we are gonna see him, and I feel like it's gonna be like crazy.
Yes.
Because he's just like talked about, you know. It's like Voldemort.
Yeah.
Or like or even like Sauron from Lord of the Rings. Like like that even though those two characters that I'm using as examples are evil, and hey, Master Tengen,
we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. Like with JJK, like the morality of all these characters are very gray a lot of the time. But I love like that whole like, oh, he's the guy. He is this like immortal creature. I really enjoyed that. I love like the feeling that gives.
Yeah, I think there's a lot they set up here that might be kind of subtle right now, but as you mentioned, it is gonna kind of pop up in the future. I think the whole Tengen thing is like, what happens when he does reach that evolutionary state? Like, do the barriers go away? Like, what does that open up? Maybe it opens up this, not realm, but like maybe it allows cursed spirits to grow even more powerful or something like that. And how does that tie into Sukuna and how he wants to be revived? Yeah. Like there's so many things that they could draw on that, which I did appreciate overall. So we did mention Riko. What did you think of her character being introduced here? I personally, because of the world building, as I mentioned with the Star Religious group, it did feel a bit rushed. Like we were kind of dropped in and she was like, oh, I'm here. I know what I have to do. Like her story was already set up. Like she's like, I know what I have to do. I'm replacing Tengen. And it's like, how did she learn that information? And, you know, she lost her parents. So this maid that is following her has kind of been her pseudo mother and protector, which I appreciate. I still connected with her, but I think it felt a bit rushed for me. What did you think about her story here and tragic demise at the end?
I totally understand your perspective. I think JJK's pacing and storytelling is kind of a double-edged sword.
Sure.
Because they move at a cutthroat pace, and they literally, like, in season 1, we see the time skips to just kind of, you know, get rid of all the filler and just jump right into the next big event, the next big event, the next big event. So it is kind of a double-edged sword where like we are rushed into Riko's story, and then only 3 episodes in she dies. I think 2 years ago when I first watched season 1, and I was in that mindset of season 1 because that was the biggest problem I had in season 1. It felt too fast. You know? I probably wouldn't have liked Riko's subplot. I wouldn't have liked it as much because of that rushed feeling to it. However, I feel like I've gotten adapted to it, and I now understand. I understand why they're moving so fast now. And I think that gave me a level of appreciation. I think her character is really well developed in only 3 episodes. I think the sequences where just Geto and Gojo are just trying to give her the best life possible, and like, you know, before her ultimate demise, and seeing them in the montage and go to the aquarium and whatnot, like I think that's really beautiful. The soundtrack and the art direction really amplify that, and I think I got it. I got her character so much more here than I did when I read the manga about a year or 2 ago. And however, I do understand your perspective.
I think JJK has a lot of it relies a lot on subtext with characters, sometimes to its detriment, sometimes it works really well. You know, it doesn't just spout exposition like here's a tragic backstory of this character. You should care about them because of this backstory, and it's like a very anime trope. But I think here, you know, there is some of that. There's a lot of subtext you kind of gotta take in, which is fine. I appreciate that compared to maybe other anime series. But yeah, I would agree. I think a lot of the art direction, I think a lot of the music used does a lot of the heavy lifting for that. And as you know, the end when it does come is so shocking that it takes you off guard, and it's almost perfect that it takes you off guard and makes you care even more. So do you want to jump into the art direction, music, and and some of the fight scenes that we see throughout this with, you know, we can jump right into Toji's introduction, taking on Gojo and then taking on Geto and just demolishing both of them.
Yeah. So episodes 3 and 4, holy shit.
Yeah.
I adore these episodes. They're badass. They're amazing. They're tragic.
Yeah.
Like, it honestly, in just those 40 minutes, those collective runtime that those 2 episodes make up, it's a 40-minute roller coaster. Just like, holy shit. I will talk about the art direction in a moment, but just like Toji's character,
go for it.
He takes the stage. He is a badass villain, and he's deadbeat dad, but like also has so many layers to him, because when he does die, we see that he does have care for his wife who passed away and Megumi. And there's a whole question into that goes into this debate of like, did he, when he said, "Oh, I forgot I had a son," there's that whole question of did he really forget?
Is he protecting him?
Yeah,
like, his existence, because the Zenin clan like probably wants him back, and he's trying to protect him. So
exactly,
that's how I took it when I watched it the second time through. I was actually like, oh, he's not a good dad, but he is protecting him, which I did appreciate.
And I adore that. There's actually a really great video by a YouTube creator called Sage Rain.
Oh, he rocks. He's so good.
Oh, you watched him? Okay.
He's so good. He's so good.
Yes, he's amazing. He did a video, I don't know if you saw, on Toji.
He usually does like manga stuff too, like manga spoilers. So I wasn't sure if there were any manga spoilers in there. Was there or no? Am I good to watch it?
No, you're good to watch it.
Right, I'm watching it. I'm watching it.
Yeah, check it out. It's a great video. It dives into just like the levels of Toji and how he's like putting this facade on for we obviously don't get told directly as the audience, but we can interpret that he's putting this facade on, like you said, to protect Megumi. Now, going to the art direction, going to this whole this glory of an episode. I think episode 3 and 4 were some of the best action episodes of the whole series,
easily.
So Toji jumping in the trees, and we saw it in the trailer for this season. He's like jumping in the trees, and then he attacks Gojo. Yeah. And you have that just epic animated scene, and his proportions are like distorting as he's flying the knife towards Gojo, and then Gojo obviously activates his limitless technique, and he just like is expended backwards in space from Gojo. That was animated by animator Kazuke Kato. Incredible job.
Yeah.
Just holy shit. Like the fluidity of it, I honestly like. Have you seen Devilman Crybaby?
No, but I know like how crazy the art direction is.
Yeah. I love how that, like, I really like when art directions like that, they prefer just fluidity over detail.
Yeah.
I love that. I just love seeing characters distort, and it just has so much more impact to it. I think Kato does a great job animating that scene. And also in episode 4, which is a beautiful episode. You have 2 scenes I would like to point out with Toji. An animator by the name of Kyukawa, when Geto unleashes his rainbow dragon on Toji. That whole like sequence, and like Toji is like, he's like on the dragon flying, and he's like shooting his gun at Geto.
Yeah.
Amazing. And as well as when Geto is like firing all those blasts, and Toji's just like dodging them and slices the dragon in half. That was animated by key animator Arifumi Imai. Just
amazing.
Beautiful.
Just
beautiful.
Amazing. Yeah, I love all that. I love that you're shouting out the animators. They deserve it. Of course, Mappa is taking a lot of heat right now for not treating their animators right. We're hoping that changes, of course, moving forward, but they deserve the credit, not this corporate Mappa. They don't deserve the credit these people do.
100%.
What I loved about the Geto and Toji fight in the kind of I guess Tengen's kind of sanctuary is I love the editing between where they're kind of walking side by side in the different rooms, and like Ghetto's trying to figure out where he is because he's masking his curse energy.
The invisible
so
man.
He's like, where is he? And it just like, you have these shots of just like Ghetto's hand like ready to shoot, and then you cut and you see Toji like come behind the rice paper door, and then he disappears again. I loved that scene. It's so great tension. And then actually, obviously the fight scene itself is amazing. So I think the reason I bring up that portion is I think we're talking about anime because we love anime, but we love anime because of what it's done for animation and the genre and the medium of animation. I think scenes like that where you have very cinematic shots for a TV show like this, we have to remember this is a weekly TV show and it's being shot at the level of an animated movie and probably exceeding most animated movies out there and really pushing the boundaries of the medium. And I absolutely love that fight. I love Gojo's fight, and I know we can probably get into Ghetto's episode after we finish up talking about this, where the direction and the cinematography for that episode are just through the roof. So those wrap up. Obviously, I do want to mention the cut to the credits when Riko's like, she dies. We cut to the credits. We're like, oh, it's going to be a good ending. Geto is reaching his hand out. She gets shot. That was amazing. I love when the tropes of anime are just undercut. But we can jump right into Gojo and his reawakening. What did you think about the way he reawakened himself using reverse curse technique to reverse negative death energy to essentially bring himself back to life? And then, as you mentioned, the Buddha quote. What did you think of that whole sequence?
I adore it. I had a feeling like we know because we see Gojo in the future.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
And we know he's mastered reverse cursed energy. And then in this, I love the little bit of foreshadowing at in the first episode when he's talking to Shoko, I believe her name is. And Shoko is obviously a master of reverse cursed energy. She is the nurse, essentially, of the school. And Gojo's like, oh, I need to learn that. Like, teach me. And then that's all you really need. You just need that one little moment in the first episode. And I think that perfectly foreshadows this moment where you see like the ripple in the blood in his hand twitch. And then he comes back just, I don't know if this was like a translation error or whatnot, but Toji describes him as high. Like he's high off of,
and he's like just like floating there. He's like having the best time.
And I love how menacing he is. Like he's like pointing to the wound in his head like that, and he just has like this. He looks like a villain, like in that scene.
For sure.
Yeah, you show that to someone who doesn't know JJK, and they'll point him out and be like, "That's the villain."
Our producer Zach actually said I looked like a villain dressed up as Gojo. He doesn't even know. So there you go.
Exactly. And I adore that scene just from beginning to end. Just the art direction, the color, that beautiful warm like sunset, the animation in that, the music, which is a track that is repeated, which I want to get here. Oh, If I Am With You,
when she's in the aquarium, right?
Yes, beautiful piano. It's done by composer Yoshimasa Teru, and just beautiful. Oh my god, I completely forgot to mention.
Go for it.
The animated scene when he does Hollow Purple, and it's like the blue and the red, and it's like water droplets
coming together,
and it just fades into his
purple.
His purple. It's just mind blowing.
It's beautiful. It's mind-blowing. I mean Toji tries to hit him with the thing, and he like ducks it, and it's like beautifully animated as it comes across his face. But I want to kind of jump into the use of color because we talked about it in the beginning, but I do want to mention it because I think while you noticed the red a lot in this season, I noticed the blue a lot more in this season, between Riko and her constant imagery of her being underwater, being kind of weighed down by this responsibility. The title track that opens the episode is where Our Blue Is, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
Awesome song. The best opening of JJK. You could argue with a wall on that one. But, and then Geto, towards the end, we see when he goes through his transformation, the fire in the room is blue, and he burns that whole village, and it's blue surrounding him. And when, you know, there's that end credit scene with him and Gojo kind of going separate ways, Gojo is bathed in like red light, and Geto is still bathed in blue light. And I thought it was really interesting, because usually you think blue as the good guy, I guess the good color, but I think blue here is probably more symbolizing change and like people going through change. And, you know, Gojo does go through a change, and I think the marrying of the red and the blue to purple kind of shows that he's towing that line. We see that Gojo morally is kind of in the middle there. He does say, should we kill all these people for what they did to her? And then even in season 2, you see that, you know, he does try to help people, but he isn't above hurting civilians to save everyone. So I like how his power kind of symbolizes where his morality is. It's blue, it's red together. And then the thing with Geto, I just noticed blue just everywhere across this with the vibrant color palette and just the symbolism with him. So what did you think about the colors? I know you had some more thoughts about red specifically, so I'd be really curious to hear that.
I think that's a really powerful interpretation. I interpreted it through like the world lore of things, because we see like cursed energy is typically depicted as blue. Like Gojo's regular technique using cursed energy is blue. And however, cursed energy comes from negative emotions. It's usually, you know, very negative. And his reversed technique, which reversed cursed energy is cursed energy times cursed energy, because negative times a negative is a positive. So then red is technically positive. And I really want to call out that one shot you mentioned where the Time Vessel Association is all clapping for the death of Riko, which is an extremely powerful scene, not to mention, just really quick, like, holy shit. Like,
crazy.
It's just filled with dread, and I love the art direction and sound design there. But like you mentioned, Gojo is in red, and he usually, before that, in all the previous episodes, he was very coated in blue the whole time. But I think, like I mentioned, red is positive now. In the world of JJK, red is positive, and at that moment, Geto changes to blue. That's really cool. That was my interpretation.
And the funny thing is, he becomes positive by being coated in his own blood. Like he is massacred by Toji, and he's like covered in blood, and that color almost takes over like his character, who's usually blue because his eyes are blue, and he usually wears the blue sunglasses. So yeah, I absolutely love that. And I do want to dive into, you know, the clapping, because it's so iconic at this point now. You know, we see how it just slowly eats away at Geto from this one incident where he sees that the non-jujutsu world doesn't appreciate what jujutsu sorcerers do for them, and he doesn't see an end to it. He's like, all these sorcerers are going to continue to die for people that don't even know what they're being saved from. And I thought that's such an interesting way to show it. And we see them clapping, like they're excited that this sorcerer, you know, Riko in some way as a sorcerer, is killed, and they're like excited about it, and it just like slowly eats away at him into the next episode, which we can dive right into. And so what did you think about the sound design and the way it was shot and his mental transformation in the next episode?
I adore it. That was honestly one of my favorite parts. I've been talking about episode 5 for months now, like ever since it first aired. Me and my friends have been talking about it, and that was the one thing that we kept referring back to, is just like how powerful, as the director of these episodes, Shuta Zano, or Gasho Zonano. I apologize.
Not our first language.
If I butcher any of the names. However, I just love the direction of like when he's in the shower.
Yeah.
And the first time we hear the clapping in episode, and at the end of episode 4, it's a traumatic moment. Then the shower, and when he's talking to Yuko, the raindrops, and how they both slowly transform into the clapping.
Water again. Oh my gosh, water change. Water blue. Oh my god. The rain, the shower, water again, showing up blue and changing him.
I didn't even realize that. Oh my god.
That's why we do these episodes. You have realizations in between them. That's awesome.
That is incredible. Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Because I did not even realize that. That's incredible. It's powerful. It's extremely powerful. It's also very clever from a directorial standpoint. And obviously, like I mentioned, those two moments are just PTSD of Geto.
It almost reminds me of like Oppenheimer when he's looking at the raindrops on the ground, or like when it starts like ticking up and up and up and up and up in his head. It's like it kind of reminded me of that. I love when the sound design can tell its own story. So that was amazing. In the shower scene, the animation of his face just like piercing through the wall, looking through the wall because of like this deep thought that he's in is amazing. I think episode 5 is definitely one of my favorite, if not my favorite episode of Jujutsu Kaisen so far. I absolutely love when it's a very character focused episode. Another thing I noticed throughout this arc with Geto is there's a lot of shots of the shots are outside the building looking in. We see it through the glass a couple times, and even when they're talking about Tengen, it's like through chairs. He's in the middle of all the chairs, and it's kind of shot from outside that. I thought that was really interesting. I don't know if there's ever a scene where, it's broken, like the outside is broken and he's kind of free, but I always thought it was an interesting decision that you kind of put him in this box and then by the end he's on stage and he accepts his role. I thought that was, again, really clever thing that I didn't notice the first time I watched it, but watching it again, I was like, it's intentional. It's got to be intentional. You don't just do that. So I thought that was really cool. And yeah, the discussion he has with Yuki, is that her name? She's the special grade Yuki. Sorcerer that we still haven't seen a lot of. This is her first introduction, and
we saw her because she's Toto's mentor.
Okay, all right.
Remember in season 1, she was like, "Oh, nice fight, boy."
Oh yeah, because she's the one that got him into asking people what the type of girl they're into. Right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes, you're right. I'm sure she's going to be a much bigger piece of this 100%. World coming soon because she's trying to do the opposite. The same thing, but opposite of what Geto wants to do. Teach people to control their cursed energy so that curses don't get created. Geto's like, I'm going to do the shortcut. Kill everyone that's not a non-sorcerer. So that was a really interesting conversation. What did you think of that and kind of the implications for the future with the JJK world?
Yeah, like, again, I sound like a broken record. Loved it. I actually want to comment directly on that because I like how you use the word shortcut.
Yeah.
During that conversation, there's actually a lot of that whole episode, like you mentioned, probably one of the best episodes of JJK. The storyboard work is amazing. And going into the storyboard work, when they're talking, Yuki is like, there's like a close up on Yuki's hand.
Okay.
And when she's saying that, the background, the frame is originally the exit. And it's the closest exit. And it's like a green exit.
Right.
Almost symbolizing like that's the shortcut way you can do it.
Right. Yeah.
And he ends up doing that. He ends up going into that direction and wanting to kill all regular humans.
Oh my God. I didn't notice that. And the other one's long. It's like a longer hallway, right?
The other one's a longer hallway. And at I could be wrong on this because I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure on the end of that longer hallway, it's like red. Like the exit sign is red, rather than green, and also just like more storyboarding and great direction here. You mentioned how Geto is framed a lot in like these like boxes. There's a scene where Gojo and Geto at the beginning, when it's like 2 years later, a year later, and Gojo's talking about like he's like flipping the pencil in his hands, like, amazing animation. It's super nice. And he's just talking about like, I can look how powerful I am. I can run my limitless technique all the time, and then use reversed cursed energy to basically heal myself simultaneously. So I could just be like an infinite, fuel of cursed energy. And while this conversation is happening, there's a frame shot within a hallway of the school looking out the window at Geto, and that hallway is pitch black. And then they cut to the other end of the school. It's like a reverse shot of that. where it's a hallway looking out the window at Gojo, but that hallway is bright and it's lit up.
Oh my gosh.
And
crazy.
Also throughout this entire episode, Gojo and Geto are never close together. They're always extremely separated. Like the spacing and it's incredible framing and shot composition. Like the spacing between them is always super just like distant.
Yeah.
Yuki, I really want to see more of her. I think she's a badass thus far. I loved her slight introduction in the first season because like her pulling up on the motorcycle, being like, I like you. You know what I mean? That's cool. And then also the implication, like you mentioned, of of this conversation in JJK.
Yeah.
And I love how like we see that this one conversation basically is the inciting incident to JJK0 and that whole film, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, I want to touch on like one last thing from that that portion that you talked about with Geto, and you see like they're farther apart, and they actually have a shot from first person of Geto, and Gojo's like, you look thinner, and it's from his eye point, and Gojo's all the way across. He's this little thing, and he's just like, no, I'm good, and it's because they've been separate, and he doesn't have his friend to kind of lean on because Gojo's so powerful at this point that they just send him on his own to take care of everything. And then we move to a conversation. You mentioned JJK0 with Gojo and Geto. Geto has finally, turned. He's killed his village. He's killed his parents. We see this amazing reaction shot of Gojo, kind of his eyes darting everywhere, his mouth like kind of like stuttering that he's finding this out. And we have this conversation as Geto is leaving. And it's the same conversation we saw in Zero, but in Zero, it was a dark world. All of the faces were just like every person was like a shadow, and it was just them two talking. In this one, it's in the world, it's bright, and Geto has this like cheery attitude, like, I know what I'm gonna do. It's gonna be for a purpose. If you want to stop me, you also have a purpose. Like, that's cool. What did you think about this conversation? Even though it's the same conversation we've seen before, what did you think of how they shot it this time? And the big line, are you the strongest because you're Gojo Satoru, or are you Gojo Satoru the strongest, or something like that?
Yeah. I love that because, like you mentioned, like the whole idea of like perspectives and telling the story from different perspectives. This arc is told from the perspective of Geto, and it's bright, it's cheery. That one scene. While in JJK0, it's told through the perspective of Gojo, and he looks at that almost as this dreary, like really depressing scene. Incredible, just storytelling there. Just visual storytelling is just out the
top tier.
Yeah, top tier. And then you mentioned the quote. Are you the strongest because you're Satoru Gojo, or are you Satoru Gojo because you're the strongest? And I love that because it's direct parallel to the first episode when they say, we are the strongest.
Right.
Like both of them are the strongest, but now he's looking at his friend, and his friend's on this whole different level.
Yeah.
And it's just that disconnect. It's felt the director and just the entire animation crew here does such a good job just with everything we've mentioned thus far, like the art direction and the shot composition, framing, color symbolism, image symbolism, direction or score, all of that. Just super powerful job. Also talking about the shot of Gojo reacting to when Principal Yaga is telling him like, yo, your best friend just murdered a village. And like, I love how that scene is edited. Like it's a POV from, we don't know who, but it's someone looking through a document. And it's like telling like what went down at that village. And we're like flipping through the document, and then it's intercut with obviously the tragedy at the village, and then hard cuts to the document to, like you mentioned, Gojo's face and Principal Yaga, which is some incredible just like voice acting. Oh my god, out of the charts for that one scene.
Yeah.
And also just incredible face animation. I looked it up. People don't know who the key animator is, but it's presumed to be Suta Yamazaki, which just beautiful there. Yeah, this episode is powerful from beginning to end.
It really is. I love the quick cuts between the incident, the report, and then Gojo, like you said.
Yeah.
It's so good, and the music there is just like winding tension there. I really like the music for this one arc because in season 1, it's actually a group of different people that orchestrated season 1's music. We have a couple of different composers, but the one that you mentioned earlier, he does the entire composition for this arc, which I think, like you said, it feels like a movie. It feels very consistent. Yeah. I think it gives it a really good, consistent feel that it's all done by the same person. I think it works in season 1, and I'm sure they're doing it in season 2. But I do like when there's one composer's vision for a score, and I think that's definitely felt here with like the very fast, glassy kind of piano and jazz inspiration, and then these beautiful piano pieces. So. Yeah, I think we've hit, just about everything. I think the last thing we want to talk about maybe is Megumi and Gojo finally meeting at the end, and kind of the implications there. What do you think that we're eventually going to see them have that conversation? How do you that Gojo did kill his father, and if that's going to affect their relationship, or if you think that Megumi's going to take that well? I'm very curious. What do you think that's going to lead to at some point?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Because obviously in Shibuya,
yes,
we know that Megumi doesn't know who Toji is still to this day. I think knowing Megumi, I honestly don't think he cares.
Right. Yeah.
I think he doesn't care. It's tough because, like we mentioned, like Toji put on a facade to this world to. At least our interpretation is that he put on that facade to protect Megumi. So everyone in the world thinks most people in the world think he's a deadbeat dad and that, he's this psychopath bounty hunter.
Yeah.
But Gojo knows more. Because Gojo was the one that heard Toji say those last words.
Right.
That's tough.
It's interesting.
That's really interesting.
I know it's probably a deeper conversation for when we talk about Shibuya, because there's more conversations between just Megumi and Gojo that give us a little bit deeper understanding of the outside world. I think another piece of JJK that I want to see more of and understand more of is the clans. We know about the Zenin and the Gojo clan, but we don't know much about anything else. We know that there's that bitter rivalry between them, and I just feel like we should know more by now, and I feel like they're still kind of dragging it along. I wish we understood a bit more about, the clan structure of the world. They keep saying like, oh, it's a bad structure. The Sorcerer world is messed up in its own right. But I feel like we need to keep digging into that, and I think that's obviously being set up by a lot of this stuff. So, yeah, definitely a tough question, but it was interesting because they did include this scene here, and I think they included again in season 2 or season 1. They ended with it kind of like him meeting younger Megumi, and at that point we didn't really understand it, but now we have a little bit more. We have a little bit more context. What was the one thing I wanted to mention? I forgot it, but that's okay. Oh, that's right. So JJK 0, what did you think about this release order? What did you think about the chronological order of things? Do you think it should have been released differently? Or do you think this was very intentional and it actually elevates the story?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you the same exact question.
I can answer it because I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Because personally, I think, looking at it through a studio perspective, I guess I understand why they put it out this way. And I think maybe Gege Akutami wanted it to be released this way because I believe the manga... I don't know when JJK 0 was released in manga form, but I believe it was released before this. I do wish, though, that we saw this before JJK 0.
Sure.
Because in season 1, we're set up to the characters and we're set up to, that. And then JJK 0 happens and Geto dies.
Right.
And we know Geto dies.
Yeah.
and then this happens. I wish we saw this, and then see his transformation into the villain. Go into JJK 0, he's a full-blown villain. You know, he's saying all that crazy stuff. Yeah. And then he dies. And then it goes into the question of season 1, and then we pick up in Shibuya.
Who is this guy? Like, is this actually still Geto, or is it someone else?
Yeah. So, I personally wish this came out before JJK 0.
I agree. I think there would have been a lot more weight to that confrontation and that final conversation, which we still don't know what they say to each other. Like, Benny last words, and he says something, but it's muted. We don't hear it. I do think that, you know, the manga artist, I think because this arc does technically end in Shibuya during, you know, the big incident, the big inciting incident of Shibuya that we'll talk about. But I think because this arc technically ends there, and that moment in Shibuya is so reliant on what happens in this arc and how they get Gojo, I think that's why they did it this way. Because I think if this maybe was released a longer time ago and then we jump into Shibuya and it's like, oh yeah, like that arc that just happened like 2 years ago, it's relying on that, I think it would have maybe been a bit disjointed. So I can see why they would do it from a character perspective, but like you said, I think that emotional weight of Zero would have been a lot higher. And then there's still that mystery, I think, that it also builds, like, who is Geto? Like what is this Geto with the stitches on his head? Is that still him? Is that like a curse technique that he learned? And then we get the revelation in Shibuya as well,
which we'll talk about.
We will talk about. It would have just been a monster of an episode if we talked about everything in Shibuya and in Premature Death. I mean, we've hit a lot of stuff. Do you have anything that I didn't bring up that you wanted to discuss in this arc, or?
I just like little things. The first, because we never really touched on the first episode, which not a lot happens there, but we are set up, and I love seeing the older characters in their much more immature status, and you know, they're young. That whole opening scene with like Mei and Yurahime going through the haunted house of sorts. I just thought that was just beautiful. That was a great opener. There's a great sequence where Yurahime is running in the hallway, and there is 2D animated backgrounds, which is amazing to see, and it's like distorting, and then we find out that Gojo is actually using his blue technique to just like destroy the house. And that is animated by key animator Yoshihide Idue. Beautiful, just beautiful. I love seeing the 2D animated backgrounds throughout the entirety of season 2, even in Shibuya, because it's incredible. That's an amazing amount of work and talent put into that. And then also in season 2, I love just building onto that, and obviously that's before the big revelation of episode 3, where like everything changes. It still has that like lighthearted attitude in season 2, or I mean episode 2, where, you know, we see Gojo, you know, he's idolized by the schoolgirls. There's funny little bits. I love the animation when Geto is fighting the Shikigami user. There's at the beginning of the sequence is animated by Kaito Tamioka. Great stuff. I love when Geto just like they join into a confrontation, and then it cuts to the Shikigami user, like his life flashes before his eyes, and he like sees his dog again, and then it hard cuts to just him getting his shit rocked, and I thought that was the funniest shit. I love that scene. Everything else, like you mentioned, I think we covered it. We covered just that, a lot of the memorable quotes. One quote I think we didn't touch on, however, was the Toji defeating Geto in episode 4, and him saying, "You got beaten by a monkey." And he refers to them as blessed, and he is the monkey. That obviously, those words change everything from that point forward. We see in JJK 0, Geto abuses that word to a copious amount. But I also really want to touch on, which I mentioned the Sage Reigns video. He mentions this and how he says the word blessed. Like he describes Gojo and Geto as blessed. Megumi, the meaning behind the name Megumi is blessing.
Whoa.
So it's almost like, you know what I mean? He was looking at his son, hoping for
he would be blessed.
Yeah, someone not like him.
Yeah, I mean, Toji, like his fatal flaw and his greatest strength is that he wants to topple or beat the greatest in the Jujutsu sorcery world. Like that's his goal, and that's what gets him killed, because he should have ran away when Gojo showed up and he's like, no, I want to beat the best, and then he gets killed. So it is interesting, like he's looking at Megumi maybe as that sacred child to change the world, like hopefully that works for him. And kind of staying with the motif of blessing, like he has this heavenly pact which makes him this strong. We don't know much about the technique, and I don't think we've seen it other than here with Toji, where he has this heavenly pact that he can't use cursed energy, but because of that he has like superhuman speed and agility and all that stuff. Do you think the heavenly pact thing is going to come up some more? I know we have seen pacts, like smaller pacts before, like between Sukuna and Yuji, but do you think this heavenly pact is something that might come up a bit later in season 2 or in the future? Because it is introduced here a lot and they're talking about it a lot. Yeah,
I think we're totally going to see it. I mean, you can make the argument, which I'm not sure if Maki has a heavenly pact, but we know that she has a very limited amount of cursed energy and that she can't see curses without the glasses. Right. So that puts into the question, does she have a heavenly pact of sorts? Then again, it also adds to, your criticism on the show, which I agree with. The explanation behind some things are very convoluted sometimes. I'm not going to lie. Talking about why JJK Zero should have came after this. When I watched JJK Zero and the confrontation between Gojo and Geto, I did not understand it. Yeah. I was like, what's going on? Right. But, I could context clues because I knew they were friends before, but seeing this made it make a lot more sense. But, explanation in JJK can be more convoluted. Also, another thing, I don't want to go on a tangent here, but in season 1, I had to do a lot of research into the magic system because I felt very disconnected with the show at first, but after I did my research into the magic system and I understood how cursed energy and cursed techniques work, I then was like, it clicked, and then I began to really like this show. It
is a really cool curse system, magic system. It's just, like you said, everyone has a different curse technique, and every explanation of it is so convoluted that sometimes it's like, it requires a rewatch, which I love when a show makes you want to rewatch something, but it shouldn't be required reading. You know what I mean? Like you shouldn't have to rewatch to understand it. So I think JJK could benefit from simplifying some of its stuff, but it has big ideas. So,
but the idea of heavenly restriction, I hope we see more characters like Toji. Yeah, because Toji's a badass. I think so cool. He does some cool stuff. I want to see more characters like him.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. I'm sure that, there's a lot of stuff that we're definitely going to get into when we talk about Shibuya. And I think the world just expands even more. But this has been great. I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been eye-opening for some of the stuff we both didn't even pick up on. I think this has been really fun. So, if anything else, or I can wrap it up for us today with JJK, the first arc of season 2.
I think that's it.
Awesome.
We covered, all the great moments, and just, it's a short arc. But it's packed. It's packed.
Animation is moving in the right direction. Animation is cinema. But thank you all for watching. If you don't already follow us on @CinemaWave Media on Instagram, give us a follow there. It's also on TikTok, Facebook, and Threads, as well as @_CultureWave Media, where you can find us on Instagram as well. Thank you again for stopping by today. Appreciate you watching. I'm Mark Jacobino, or Gojo Satoru.
And I'm Vinny Albano.
Thanks for watching, everyone.